Privacy coins are in danger in Europe. The education giant Pearson has been hacked. The Peertube app hits version 1.0 and more. Welcome to Surveillance Report 225, where we are dedicated to keeping you private and secure with the latest news from the past week. I am Nathan from The New Oil.
And I'm Henry from Techlore.
We do not have a sponsor this week, actually, so we want to take this time to remind you guys that we really do appreciate all your support, because your support is what allows us to be selective with sponsors and only pick sponsors that we believe in and make sure that we're not just shilling any random VPN or mattress company or shady streaming app. You know, you guys help us keep the lights on and keep us going, even when we do have sponsors. So that way, weeks like this where we don't have a sponsor, we don't have to sweat it, and we really appreciate that. So yeah, if you would like to keep us going and help us remain stable and consistent and chugging along, again, we super appreciate it. There's Patreon. For $5 a month, you get access to our Signal group, our SimpleX group. You get to ask us questions for the Q&A. For $10 a month or more, you get all that, of course, plus the extended version of the podcast that doesn't include this pitch, includes more of our thoughts and our jokes and our banter between us if you want a little bit more analysis and also just to kind of get to know us a little better, I guess. If you're not interested in any of the perks, but you just want to support us in a recurring fashion where you don't have to think about it, we do have LibrePay. And of course, for the maximum amount of privacy and anonymity, we have Monero. Or if you just want to ask us a question one time and also preserve your privacy, we have XMR Chat. And that has been going really well, and we appreciate all of you guys who have been asking us questions on that. And all of our other supporters, whether that's Patreon, LibrePay, one-time Monero. We really appreciate you guys. And again, thank you for keeping us going. Our highlight story this week. The EU is set to ban anonymous crypto accounts and privacy coins by 2027. So this story came from Cointelegraph, who focuses a lot on cryptocurrency news, as the name may imply. They said that there's this new anti-money laundering regulation, or AMLR, going through Europe. And they say under the new AMLR, credit institutions, financial institutions, and crypto asset service providers, or CASPs, will be prohibited from maintaining anonymous accounts or handling privacy-preserving cryptocurrencies such as Monero and Zcash. They quote the relevant section of the article here, says Article 79 of the AMLR establishes strict prohibitions on anonymous accounts. Credit institutions, financial institutions, and crypto asset service providers are prohibited from maintaining anonymous accounts. So exactly like they said. This regulation is part of a broader anti-money laundering framework that includes bank and payment accounts, passbooks, and safe deposit boxes, quote, crypto asset accounts allowing anonymization of transactions, and accounts using anonymity-enhancing coins. Interesting that it specifies coins there. I wonder if they know about things like CoinJoin, Tornado Cash, all the other external factors. So I wonder if those were not listed on purpose or if they think that's implied. Under the new regulatory framework, CASPs operating in at least 6 member states will be under direct AML supervision. The thresholds include a minimum of 20,000 customers residing in the host member state, or a total transaction volume of over 50 million euros, which is $56 million at the time this was published. Other notable measures include mandatory customer due diligence on transactions above 1,000 euros, or again, 1,100 US dollars. As with a lot of the things we cover, I think my take on this is I think there are valid concerns, especially with, ransomware. They always want to be paid in crypto, right? Ironically, though, a lot of them are still opting, well, maybe not ironically, a lot of them are still opting to be paid in Bitcoin because it is the most mainstream one, and it's easier for companies to understand how to get Bitcoin. You jump on Coinbase, you buy a bunch of Bitcoin. I'm sure it's a little bit more involved than that, but it's easier than compared to like Monero, where even here in the privacy community, a lot of the time people are like, where the hell do I get Monero? So a lot of the time they'll accept Bitcoin and then they will launder it either using some kind of mixer or converting it to another cryptocurrency like Monero or Zcash with the shielded transactions. So I think there's a valid concern about that. But this is one of the, what was the story we covered a couple weeks ago? This is like, it uses a butcher knife where a scalpel is needed or something like that. Like, this is just such an overreaction. Imagine if they did this back before the internet days. Like, oh, cash is used for money laundering by criminals and organized crimes. We'll just ban cash. That's basically what they're doing. Those thresholds are interesting, and I'm not sure what the point of them is, if we're being honest, in this context. Like, I know usually those thresholds are to avoid like penalizing small operations, but I don't know. That just seems really weird to me. I don't know. I think that's kind of my only thought on this. Obviously, we are not fans of this being privacy people. We just made the pitch. We accept Monero. I've dabbled in Zcash. I think these are great technologies. And again, I understand that there is a problem that needs to be addressed, but I think this is kind of one of those, like, if you outlaw something, only the criminals will use it. This is not going to stop them from using it because a lot of these currencies and mixers and things like that exist outside of the EU. I don't know what they're trying to solve with this one. I guess I'll turn it over to Henry, who's a little bit more knowledgeable about crypto than I am.
I suppose so. I guess.
I said a little bit.
One of the quotes from the article was, the new rules will introduce a prohibition of anonymous crypto asset wallets and a full ban of anonymous transfers, which I think is really important to talk about because that seems to imply that this actually goes after even non-custodial wallets. So a lot of times they'll target things like exchanges and centralized exchanges, and that's kind of the main place they go after. And it's a pretty easy place to regulate, and they do it without severely impacting individual freedom and individual choice and just software that you own. I actually don't see how this is possible to regulate in the way that they're proposing it. This challenges a decentralized way the internet works. And if they're able to go after this, there's a lot of other decentralized technologies that through very similar regulation they could go after. So this seems like a pretty big overstep to me, especially because it seems to put people who have non-custodial wallets in the crosshairs, which theoretically, right? Like if someone owns Monero and you do some work for them and you're in Europe, like them sending you Monero could then be a crime, is kind of what this is saying, even though it's all non-custodial and it's just peer-to-peer at that point. This is an attack on self-custody. It's an attack on privacy, and it's definitely something to follow. And frankly, I don't know how they'd regulate this. This seems extremely hard to regulate in any way, shape, or form, which is why they normally go after exchanges to just make it harder for people to get Monero. But it's something that I know I'll be following pretty closely.
I guess the last thing I wanted to point out is like, I don't know how bulletproof this is, and it really depends on your setup and everything, but I think this is also a reminder why we're a big fan of things like VPNs and Tor, because theoretically, like if you're using these tools and you have good OPSEC, the goal is always to be too much hassle to track down, right? So as long as you're not some drug kingpin, some like cyber criminal running a ransomware empire or worse, I don't think they're going to bother to go through all the trouble of trying to break Tor and figure out which wallet is yours. As opposed to if you just connect without a VPN to the nearest tower and you open, not trying to throw you guys under the bus, but you open Cake Wallet, it's pretty easy to know that phone just accessed a crypto service. And just something to keep in mind that this is why things like that really matter, even if right now it may not be an issue. You know, we've seen this a lot in the past few years. You never know what'll become an issue in the future.
All right, we're going to go into the data breaches, and we're going to start with, I guess, a very weird data breach. There's a Signal clone that the Trump administration has been using that was hacked. It's called Telemessage, and it's from this obscure Israeli company. Essentially, it's just a Signal client that is modified to be able to archive messages. Now, the data stolen by the hacker contains the contents of some direct messages and group chats sent using its Signal clone, as well as modified versions of WhatsApp, Telegram, and WeChat. This is pretty concerning because it contains serious vulnerabilities that allowed hackers to trivially access the archived chats of some people who use the same tool. The hacker specifically has not obtained the messages of cabinet members, walls, and people he spoke to, but the hacks show that the archived chat logs are not end-to-end encrypted between the modified version of the messaging app and the ultimate archive destination controlled by the telemessage computer. Data related to Customs and Border Protection, the cryptocurrency giant Coinbase, and other financial institutions are included in the hacked material, according to screenshots. They said this took 15 to 20 minutes, and they described that it wasn't much effort at all. And this also included names, contact information, usernames, and passwords for telemessage backend panels, and indications of what agencies and companies might be customers. The data is not representative of all telemessage's customers or the sorts of messages that it covers. Instead, it is snapshots of data passing through the servers at a point in time. The article goes on to describe a number of other sensitive orgs and conversations caught up in the hack, if you want to read that down below.
Our next story is pretty quick. It comes from venture capital giant Insight Partners, who confirmed investor data was stolen in a breach. They are a prominent global venture capital and private equity firm specializing in high growth technology, software, and internet companies. They have over $90 billion in regulatory assets, and they've invested in more than 800 companies, including some you might recognize like Twitter, HelloFresh, and Veeam. The data that exposed varies per individual and investor, and it may include fund information, management company information, portfolio company information, banking information, tax information, personal information of current and former employees, and information related to limited partners.
PowerSchool hacker is now extorting individual school districts. So we talked about this story a good while ago. PowerSchool is essentially like an infrastructure that a lot of schools use around the country in the US, and I think also other countries as well in North America. So they paid the ransom. And the funniest part is they're getting kind of greedy. So now they're targeting individuals and trying to extort money from individuals as well. This original hack occurred in August and September of 2024. It wasn't detected until December, and then it was revealed a full month after that. and this impacted 62 million students and almost 10 million teachers.
Education giant Pearson hit by a cyber attack exposing customer data. Pearson, for those who have had the pleasure of not dealing with them, is a UK-based education company and one of the world's largest providers of academic publishing, digital learning tools, and standardized assessments. The company works with schools, universities, and individuals in over 70 countries through its print and online services. In a statement to Bleeping Computer, Pearson confirmed that they suffered a cyber attack and the data was stolen, but stated it was mostly quote-unquote legacy data. This stolen data allegedly contains customer information, financials, support tickets, and source code, with millions of people impacted. However, when Bleeping Computer asked Pearson about whether they paid a ransom, what they meant by legacy data, how many customers were impacted, and if customers would be notified, that last one's important, the company responded that they would not be commenting on these questions. And then our last one, really quick, because it's just numbers. Ascension says recent data breach affected over 430,000 patients. I'm 99% sure we covered this data breach. There's been a lot of health data breaches and Ascension specifically, so I could be wrong, but we didn't have numbers back then. If you missed that one and you think you might be impacted, definitely check the notes in the article. They've got a full recap of when it happened, what data, all that fun stuff.
Now we're going to go into the company news, and we're going to start with some fun stuff here, which is neurotech companies are selling your brain data. This is going to be quoting the article here. So while the concept of neural technologies may conjure up images of brain implants like Elon Musk's Neuralink, there are far less invasive and less regulated neurotech products in the market, including headsets that help people meditate, purportedly trigger lucid dreaming, and promise to help users with online dating by helping them swipe through apps based on your instinctive reaction. These consumer products gobble up insights about users' neurological data, and since they aren't categorized as medical devices, the companies behind them aren't barred from sharing that data with third parties. The letter cites a 2024 report by the NeuroRights Foundation, which found that most neurotech companies not only have few safeguards on user data, but also have the ability to share that information with third parties. They also surveyed companies whose products are available to consumers without the help of a medical professional. Implants like those made by Neuralink weren't among them. The companies surveyed made it difficult for users to opt out of having their neurological data shared with third parties, and just over half the companies mentioned in the report explicitly let consumers revoke consent for data processing, and only 14 of the 30 give users the ability to delete their data. In some instances, user rights aren't universal, so some companies only let users in the EU delete their data, but don't grant the same rights to users elsewhere in the world.
This next one's pretty straightforward. Class action accuses Toyota of illegally sharing drivers' data with Progressive. The lawsuit alleges that Toyota and Connected Analytics Services, or CAS, collected vast amounts of vehicle data, including location, speed, direction, braking, and swerving/cornering events, and then shared that information with Progressive's Snapshot data sharing program. The lawsuit alleges that Toyota never provided the plaintiff with any sort of notice that the car manufacturer would share his data with third parties. When he followed up with Progressive to inquire about the exact flow of his data, he was told that Progressive obtains data from CAS, which is a data aggregator that provides telematics and vehicle build data to insurance companies. The lawsuit says class members suffered actual injury from having their driving data collected and sold to third parties, including but not limited to damage to and diminution in the value of their driving data, violation of their privacy rights, and the likelihood of future theft of their driving data.
Meta's decided to add facial recognition to glasses after all. So on Wednesday, they reported that Meta is working on facial recognition for the company's Ray-Ban glasses. This sort of tech, which combines facial recognition with a camera feed, is something that big tech like Meta has been able to pull off, but has decided not to release. There are risks, they say, with anyone being able to instantly know the real identity of anyone else who just happens to walk past their camera feed, be that in a pair of glasses or other sorts of cameras. The move is an obvious about-face from Meta. Now, the rest of the article goes into Joseph from 404 Media's back and forth with Meta spokesperson, who complained that 404 was being misleading when they reported on the college kids who rigged up some Meta glasses with FRT. And so speaking about the aforementioned college kids, this is a quote, "They said themselves in a demonstration video they identified dozens of people without their knowledge. You do that by wearing a pair of glasses that look like any other. Meta's Ray-Bans do have a light that turns on when it's recording, but according to the news report, Meta is questioning whether new versions of its glasses need this."
SoundCloud has changed their policies to allow AI training on user content. This was updated on February 7th, and it says, quote, "You explicitly agree that your content may be used to inform, train, develop, or serve as input to artificial intelligence or machine intelligence technologies or services as part of and for providing the services." This is a tweet from the person who discovered this. They said, "I checked the Wayback Machine. It seems to have been added to their terms on February 12th, 2024. It's worth noting the terms have a carve-out for content under quote-unquote separate agreements with third-party rights holders, such as record labels. SoundCloud has a number of licensing agreements with indie labels as well as major music publishers, including Universal Music and Warner Music. TechCrunch wasn't able to find an explicit opt-out option in the platform settings menu, SoundCloud did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
Now we're going to get into research. WhatsApp provides no cryptographic management for group messages. So this is from a team of researchers, and they made the finding in a formal analysis of WhatsApp, where essentially what they've been doing is they are reverse engineering the app. And they gave the messenger a clean bill of health, and they found that it works securely and as described by WhatsApp. However, there is an issue. They discovered a largely overlooked behavior that should give some group messaging users pause. Like other messengers billed as secure, with the notable exception of Signal, which they specifically said, WhatsApp doesn't provide any sort of cryptographic means for group management. What does this mean? Well, what this means is that it's possible for the WhatsApp server to add new members to a group. And what they said is that a correct client, like the official clients, will display this change, but they won't prevent it. So any group chat that does not verify who has been added to the chat can potentially have their messages read. The chance of someone exploiting this weakness to access a WhatsApp group for soccer parents is likely nil. A nation-state operative, on the other hand, trying to crash a group of government officials discussing sensitive national security issues is well within the realms of possibility. In such a case, a WhatsApp admin with sufficient system privileges could add as many users to an existing group as desired, so could an attacker who managed to hack the WhatsApp infrastructure. With many groups numbering in the dozens or even hundreds of members, the notification might not be easy to notice. WhatsApp isn't the only messenger lacking cryptographic assurances for new group members. A team that included some of the same researchers actually found that Matrix does the same thing and doesn't guarantee this. Telegram, meanwhile, offers no end-to-end encryption for group messages, making the app among the weakest for ensuring the confidentiality of group messages. In contrast, the open source Signal Messenger provides a cryptographic assurance that only an existing group member designated as the group administrator can add new members. They did report this to WhatsApp, and WhatsApp said they reviewed the researcher submission and appreciate their work. And they said, "We've designed WhatsApp to bring simple, reliable, and private messaging at scale to billions of people. For all groups, you are notified when someone new joins, and you can also enable security notifications that prominently let you know of any security code changes with who you're chatting with. We're always adding new layers of protection, and we'll keep doing so."
Now we'll move into the politics section. Jury orders NSO to pay $167 million for hacking WhatsApp users. So WhatsApp sued NSO. For those who don't know, that is a spyware maker in Israel. They are the makers of the infamous Pegasus spyware. In 2019, WhatsApp sued NSO for an attack that targeted roughly 1,400 mobile phones belonging to attorneys, journalists, human rights activists, political dissidents, diplomats, and senior foreign government officials. NSO, which works on behalf of governments and law enforcement authorities in various countries, exploited a critical WhatsApp vulnerability that allowed it to install NSO's proprietary Pegasus software on iOS and Android devices. The clickless exploit works by placing a call to the target's app. A target did not have to answer the call to be infected. Again, if you haven't heard of it, once you're infected, they can basically do everything. They can see all your texts. I think they can take pictures. They can turn on the microphone. They can pretty much do everything. It's scary stuff. So the verdict reached on Tuesday comes as a major victory not just for Meta-owned WhatsApp, but also for privacy and security rights advocates who have long criticized the practices of NSO and other exploit sellers. The jury also awarded WhatsApp $444 million in compensatory damages.
The Florida bill requiring encryption backdoors for social media accounts has failed. So the social media use by minors bill was indefinitely postponed and withdrawn from consideration in the Florida House of Representatives earlier this week. Lawmakers in the Florida Senate had already voted to advance the legislation, but a bill requires both legislative chambers to pass before it can become law. The article didn't specify why.
And now it's time for free and open source news. First up, Peertube App version 1 is out. So today, Framasoft is proud to present version 1 of the Peertube mobile application 4 months after its first release. It is the work of a single developer, thanks in no small part to your feedback and support. So here are some of the things that you can expect out of the version 1 app. The ability to use multiple accounts in the app, the ability to leave comments. You can manage your subscriptions and playlists. You can thumbs up or thumb down a video. 2FA is supported. I guess it was not in earlier versions. Video history is available, and a new kind of cute little icon. I guess if you like squids, it's kind of cute. Things they're going to work on in the near future: background playing. So like if you navigate away from the app, it'll keep playing. Next video recommendations. Apparently, the list of available platforms is kind of limited in the application. Improved notifications, and then broadcast to TV. They are asking the audience, do you think it's worth it to be able to upload and manage videos in the app? And then I think this is like further down the road. They want to adapt it for tablets. They want to adapt it for TVs like Google TV, Apple TV, depending on their limitations. And then offline viewing so you can download the content and view it later.
This one is actually a tip from the Privacy Dad, who runs a blog, which was Funny enough, kind of inspired from our podcast, but they actually emailed us and they said that in January 2025, January 16, 2025, Google no longer supports performing search queries without JavaScript. And this is a fundamental part of how Google works. So Google requests the JavaScript for your search results, then filters out the garbage. But they got rid of this, and so Google's no longer working. So they're going to continue monitoring the status of the JavaScript-free results and looking into workarounds, and we'll make another post if a solution is found or not.
This next one is really quick, I think. It's for the Windows users in the crowd. It says Microsoft finally makes Fedora an official Windows subsystem for Linux. So it says installing it is simple enough. Just open up a terminal and type WSL install Fedora Linux 42 to get started. You can see the exact spacing and syntax and whatnot in there. After that, launch it with WSL-D Fedora Linux 42 and set your username. No password is required by default, and you'll automatically be part of the wheel group, meaning you can use sudo right out of the gate. The WSL release doesn't come loaded with unnecessary packages, which the author appreciates. It includes the essentials like the powerful DNF package manager and gives users the freedom to build out their system as needed. One thing worth noting is that Flatpak is not installed by default. So if you want graphical apps, you'll need to run sudo DNF install Flatpak and then go through the FlatHub setup process. It's an extra step, but nothing too painful. The Fedora team isn't done either. Work is already underway to improve Flatpak support and add hardware accelerated graphics for GUI applications running in WSL.
And on the topic of Linux, Ubuntu is doing something pretty cool, which is they are now adopting sudo rs by default, which is a memory-safe version of sudo. It's a memory-safe re-implementation, and it's written in Rust. And it's part of a broader effort to improve resilience and maintainability of core system components. They plan to make sudo rs the default in Ubuntu 25.10. This will allow time for acceptance testing by end users and ensure that sudo rs is battle tested before its inclusion in the next long-term support release, which is Ubuntu 26.04, which will be supported for a minimum of 12 years.
And our last story, this is in the Misfits section, and it says FBI, end-of-life routers hacked for cybercrime proxy networks. The FBI is warning that threat actors are deploying malware on end-of-life routers to convert them into proxies sold on the 5SOX and any proxy networks. Really, that's the main detail. This just seemed like a good time to remind people, please keep your stuff updated if you can. If you can't, like if you're really tight on funds or, tariffs are, I'm sure, wreaking havoc right now, look into harm mitigation. And that was all our news this week. So privacy coins are in danger in Europe. I guess if you're in a state where you can express this to your politicians, please do. Tell them that's not the right solution and they need to go back to the drawing board. The education giant Pearson has been hacked. Unfortunately, the hackers took the wrong action, but Pearson still persists. The Peertube app has hit version 1, which is exciting, and a lot of other news. And I will turn it over to Henry now to make the pitch for our community support methods.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is when we get new sponsors, we feel very lucky, especially when they align with our values, but that doesn't always happen. It's super cool to have like the consistent support from all of you. We couldn't do this podcast without all of you, and we're both very appreciative for it. We wouldn't be able to do this for so long. I mean, we've been doing this for years now, and we hit most weeks, and it's only possible because of all the support you guys give us. So if you want to be a part of that, we also try to give perks back. So we have a private Signal and SimpleX group. We remove these segments because you're already supporting us, so we don't need to ask you guys to support us in the patron version. So we actually take the time to do 2 different timelines in our video editors. We export 2 different audio versions and 2 different video versions. Uploading surveillance ports is actually such a pain in the ass each week. I'm sure Nate knows that. And it's just because we try to give you guys different cuts. And also as part of that, in the patron versions, we also include a lot more rambling and a lot more commentary and analysis. A lot of people leave comments saying, wow, this seems like they're just reading off show notes. And it's like, yeah, that kind of is the public version, but we actually dig a lot more into stories in the patron version pretty often. So that's the best way to support what we do. We also support Monero, and we also support XMR chat if you want more individual ways to support us. And now I'll leave it back to Nate if you don't want to support us financially, but you want to still give back.
So that's all we have for you guys this week. Thank you so much for listening to Surveillance Report. As always, links to all the stories are found in the show notes. So if you think we didn't cover anything enough and you want to know more, definitely check that out. If you have a story you think that we missed, please send it to news@surveillancereport.tech. I'm getting a lot better at making sure I write them down. I know I've missed a few in the past. I'm trying to get better about that. The final thing we want to ask of you, please share the podcast around. Make sure that you are subscribed. Give us a rating if you're listening on a platform where that's an option. We are trying to reach as many people as possible, and anything you can do helps with that. You know, we mentioned like commenting in the algorithm and stuff, and that does help. Really sharing it with friends and family, because coming from you is going to mean more than just like popping up in an ad, which we don't pay for ads, but you know, popping up in an ad or even popping up in the algorithm. If it's something you've sent your family, they're much more likely to watch it. But yeah, again, if you've got family and friends who are like, you talked about this privacy stuff a million times, tired of hearing about it, totally get it. Again, comments, subscribe, rating really does help. So thank you guys again for listening. We will see you next week with more news.